Listen up, because the lessons I'm about to share with you would have easily saved me $10,000, which hurts a little bit inside every time I say it, but it would have saved me 10 grand in years of effort. You see, when I was 18, I decided to start my first formalized business. I had done lemonade stands and shoe shining businesses and things, but I wanted kind of a formalized company. And at the time I was cooking a lot, I was grilling, I was making my own sauces to throw on chicken and things. And I thought, why don't I just make and sell my own barbecue sauce? And here was my first critical error. Instead of starting with the minimum viable product approach that we teach in our courses at Boss Club, I completely skipped that and I jumped straight to commercial production, baby. Big Bear BBQ sauce was born. So what did I do? Of course, I went out and hired a marketing firm to create an awesome logo and website for me. I had t-shirts designed, I had car magnets made, and best of all, I had a sweet bottle of barbecue sauce. And no, I didn't just order 10. Why don't we just double that? No, let's double it again. Let's double it again. Let's double it again. Let's double it a couple more times. And that's still not as many as I actually made. I, wait for it, produced 2,400. It's so funny to think about. 2,400 bottles of this stuff as my first run. Did I talk to anybody first? Did I say, hey, would anyone want to buy barbecue sauce from me? Did I find other people to go kind of model and say, hey, they've had success, so I think I can do it too? No, absolutely not. I said, I want to make this. It's delicious. I think I can sell it. Let's go for it. And all in, I dropped about $10,000 to start this business. So error number one was ordering way too much inventory instead of starting small. So what I do differently this time is start with a much simpler version of the product, just like in a mason jar or something with a simple label. Wouldn't that be nice? So that way I wouldn't have to pay a manufacturer to do massive volume, and then I would do a limited quantity sale of it and intentionally run out of inventory to build scarcity and excitement for the next time that I was releasing batch. This would make it way cheaper to produce, and more importantly, I could validate whether or not anyone actually wanted to buy the stuff in the first place and if it was worth scaling up. My second error was that I didn't do the math ahead of time to figure out what the business would realistically look like and what it would take to actually pay myself a reasonable wage. It cost me $2.52 per bottle to make, and I was selling it for $5 each. So that meant I was making $2.48 per bottle sold. In other words, if I wanted to make $100, I would have to sell 40 bottles. And most people were buying just one bottle at a time. So do you know how much effort it takes to sell 40 individual bottles to 40 different people? It's a lot of work. So then I got smarter and I said, well, why don't I sell it in quantities of like 6 or something through the website? So I was able to do that. But the problem is, these, if you can hear it, these things are glass bottles, so I had to be very careful in shipping them because I'd get pictures from people. My friend's mom would order 6 and it would show up in New York and it would just be completely shattered and barbecue sauce everywhere. I vividly remember that. So I had to pack them really, really well and spend a lot of money on bubble wrap, and then it took a bunch of time to wrap it up. So even if I sold 6 different bottles, by the time it was all said and done, between all the packaging materials and the amount of time that it took me to do all of that and run to UPS, by the time it was all said and done, it would take me an hour to make $10. So at that point, might as well just get a job. So what I do differently is twofold. First, I would have only sold quantities directly to people in batches of like 4 or 6 bottles. I wouldn't have even had an option to sell one $5 bottle. And secondly, I would have put it in plastic bottles, so that way shipping was way less expensive and it didn't have a risk of shattering. My next error, and probably the biggest one, was that I had build it and they will come mentality. Basically, I loved Big Bear barbecue sauce. Doesn't everyone know how much effort I put into it? Doesn't everyone know how good it tastes? Aren't they just gonna come buy for me? And so I sat back and I waited for them to come buy for me. And guess what? They didn't. And after having started many different companies since Big Bear, let me tell you one of my biggest pieces of advice here entrepreneurially. It's that you can literally build anything you want. If you want to build a barbecue sauce company, you can build that. If you want to build a little microphone company, you can do that. But the thing that will kill companies is not spending time on marketing the thing, on selling the thing that you just built. And I spent 95% of my time just building the thing, and then the 5% kind of marketing it, kind of trying to make sales. And it should have been the exact opposite. I should have spent a little bit of time making the sauce and then 95% of my time trying to sell it. So with Big Bear, what I would have done differently specifically is twofold. First of all, I would have really focused my effort on making repeat sales, because it's way easier to sell to someone a second or third or fourth or fifth time than it is to finding a new customer. So if I could have found, 50 people to buy $20 worth of sauce from me a month, that's $1,000. That's a really good starting place. And so there's a lot of different ways you can make repeat sales. Actually, over on the Boss Club podcast, episode 9, we talk about what to do after you've made your first 10 sales. And there's tons of ideas on how to start making repeat sales from the very start of your business. So I'd encourage you to go catch that and check it out. I will link it down in the description. Tons of ideas. So I would have really focused on that. And then secondly, because I had low margin, meaning I wasn't making very much per bottle of barbecue sauce, I needed a lot of volume. In other words, I needed to sell a lot of these. So a great place to sell a lot of these would have been in grocery stores. And I didn't put any effort into trying to get into grocery stores. So I would have literally driven to every single, if I could go do it again, I would drive to every single grocery store within 100 miles of where I was living at the time and go ask them, how do I get this on the shelf? What deal makes sense for you? What percentage do I need to give you? And then furthermore, how do I sweeten the deal for you? Do I need to literally smoke a brisket outside of your grocery store to, delight your customers, give out free samples, give out free brisket sandwiches, to advertise Big Bear and say, hey, it's only sold here in supermarket X or whatever. What do I need to do to make this a no-brainer for you to put Big Bear on the shelves? That's how I would have started to get some volume, and then I would have focused on repeat sales. Now, mistake number 4 took me a few years to realize. As the business kind of sputtered along, I'm sure there's some bear metaphor I could use here, as it was hibernating a little bit, so to speak, it occurred to me that the reason that I started the business, the goal for the business, was not to go make a bunch of money. It was really to figure out, how do you start a more formalized business? How do you file an LLC? How do you, hire a company to go do your branding and to get, these product codes and stuff on the back? How do you go do any of this? And once I kind of accomplished that, I really took my foot off the gas pedal, and I realized later on it's because, that was your goal. And had I realized and been honest with myself that that was my goal the whole time, it wasn't to go make sales, it wasn't to go really focus on marketing, I think it would have really changed so many of the decisions that I made. So what I would have done differently in this case was to write down on a piece of paper what I was hoping to get out of starting a business like this, and then every single decision I made would need to be in line with that goal. Like, for example, I did not need 2,400 bottles of barbecue sauce to complete that goal of starting something. I didn't need to pay a design company to build out a full brand and a full website for me. I could have skipped all of that, saved 10 grand, and done a much smaller version of this and accomplished my goal and been really happy with that. Of the 2,400 bottles that I can't say that without laughing. That's such an aggressive amount of barbecue sauce. So anyways, out of the 2,400 bottles I started with, I ended up with about 1,200 left through sales I made and through giving away free samples and things like that. But I still had 1,200 bottles of barbecue sauce that were about to expire. Their shelf life was expiring in a few months. And so I made the hard decision to literally give it all away. So I went to the local food pantry, loaded all that in the back of my truck, and gave it all to charity. And you better believe that they threw one heck of a barbecue based on all of that free sauce that they got. But since then, I've started several successful businesses, and luckily I didn't repeat the same mistakes that I just covered. Because I found that just like there's a great recipe for making barbecue sauce, there's a really good recipe for starting businesses so that you're set up for success. And in the video on the screen, I'm going to give you that exact step-by-step process so you can avoid all the mistakes I just covered. So I'll see you over there.